Blue Marble Radical Cup North America, M-Zone Radical Cup Canada out on track. This is our final race of 6 here on the streets of Toronto. Tom Drewer is back to join us. Dave Bradley will return momentarily to call the Radical Cup action. You guys had plenty of action during the earlier activity this afternoon. Some in the wet, some in the dry. Should be mostly dry, at least this afternoon.
Absolutely. Hopefully we can get some green flag laps this time. Of course, lots of action last time with those Blue Marble Radical Cup cars coming up through the field. We are green flag in the Canadian classes, and it was Gavin Sanders from the pole position. Second quickest was Jake Cowden. And now, if you're looking on the front straightaway, you're about to get a start for the Blue Marble Radical Cup. On the pole in that class is Wayne Williams, who was fantastic, and we've got a green flag as well. So Wayne Williams will take the green from John Field. Nick Persing up there as well, and it'll be interesting to see how we go with the Platinum class cars trying to carve up their way through the Blue Marble Radical Cup field, as well as, no doubt, that M-Zone Radical Cup Canada field.
That's one of the interesting things about having these two combined fields, and with the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America having different categories of radicals, as you almost have to manage the traffic, much like they do in the sports car racing that we were just watching. Different categories going different speeds around this track.
Absolutely, and it should be some great action. Of course, the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada competitors really excited to be playing a big role here at the Honda Indy Toronto. And it really is a wonderful opportunity for a lot of young guns, a lot of guys that have been running radicals for years, to get behind the wheel and star in front of a home crowd.
We did have plenty of action in the earlier race today. Aurora Strauss was one of those that had a bit of an off, had a bit of a crash in corner number 3. She has said that she is okay, though, and has reported that she is good to go for this afternoon's event. I know a number of folks were interested in that.
Yeah, she did get a penalty, unfortunately, from a little incident there, and we are under full course caution. We're flying a little bit blind in the commentary booth, so we will we'll let you know that we don't quite have the cameras and things that we usually do up here. We'll try and give you some color for this race and give you some understanding of some of the background and the stories in this field.
Dave Bradley has rejoined us from his podium duties from the sports cars as well. So just talking with Tom that it's a bit like sports car racing here with a number of different classes and categories from the Blue Marble Radical Cup. You're navigating traffic throughout this field, not at the moment under full course yellow.
Yeah, absolutely. And the drivers have to be aware, and that's the main thing. And that's the number one sort of holdover that you hear from the sports car drivers. You have to be aware of who's around you, who you're quicker than, and who might be able to be overtaking you in the individual corners. And again, the changing track conditions, we've talked about that over the course of the day. These cars were out on a full wet track just a little while ago, earlier today. Completely different setup. So you go back to what you learned in practice yesterday, where the track was dry, but now there's still damp spots. So you don't really want to go full wet or full dry, but yeah, it's all up in the air. So that really affects things, and unfortunately we get slowed by a full course caution in the early going of this race. Again, just 3.5 minutes into this 35-minute timed race.
Yeah, and Jake Cowden has got the jump on Gavin Sanders. So before the full course caution came out, so it's a great result, if you like, for Jake Cowden being able to leapfrog ahead. Kenny Reedman still in third place. Owen Clark in fourth. And those guys really have been the stars of the M-Zone Radical Cup show thus far throughout this weekend. Pro 1340's Ken Savage, who did start from pole, is still in the lead of that from Jace Bacon. And Robert Cipriani Dietrich with a little bit of work to do. In the Platinum class, Wayne Williams, at the moment on timing and scoring, is still in the lead. And he is indeed with John Field second. So Wayne, again, just starring in these Platinum class cars and trying conditions all this weekend. We talked about how he loves the feel of the car moving, or loves the car moving around him. and underneath him, he is a star on the dirt, and so far he's shown his prowess around the bumpy street circuit that is the Honda Indy Toronto circuit.
And that's something that should be underlined, because a dirt driver going from dirt to asphalt ovals is one thing. Being comfortable on the oval, turning left all the time, but jumping into a road or street circuit from a dirt background is a very different learning curve. It's something that you really have to pay attention to try and figure out, and it looks like Williams has done just that in a short order.
He was saying in his first event down in New Orleans that he's just got to learn to trust the downforce. Of course, these cars, you can see the big front splitter, big rear wing, big rear diffuser on them, plenty of downforce created. Proper prototype racing car. And it really is a case of learning to trust that. Your brain is pretty good at knowing the grip levels when it comes to mechanical grip and what you get from the tires, but throw some downforce in there, and and you've really got to grit your teeth. Tell yourself to believe in the equipment, and he's still learning that. Robert Soroka has taken the early lead in Pro 1500, a strong start for him over Nick Persing, who's been relegated to second place. Danny Dashelski is third in that class with Greg Gorski fourth. And it looks like, just trying to pick up some of the people that may have been involved.
Tim Sanderson in the 07 might have been involved in this, because I'm looking. He seems to be a lap down in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada group. So he's sitting in 10th or 12th right now in the 07. And that's not a familiar place for him. Normally he's up sort of mid-pack towards the front of the pack with the experience that he brings to the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. And so right now being marked as one lap down. Again, we're flying a little bit blind without the benefit of a monitor to see all aspects of this circuit. So just looking at timing and scoring, and we can tell you that's the only driver who seems to have missed laps right now.
So as you look down the order, there's so many great stories in this paddock. And the Radical Cup sort of collects drivers from all around the continent. Of course, a lot of people starting their careers at country clubs. A lot of people choosing a Radical for track days and then stepping up to local competition. Ken Savage has come through the ranks in terms of racing schools. He's done so well. And it looks like lights are going out. This time we might get a green flag again.
Fantastic. We'll be back up to speed this time as they cross the stripe. You'll hear the engine start to pick up the RPM as they work through turns 9, 10, into 11, and onto this front straightaway. And after separating the groups on the original start, now they're all mishmashed together as they head down towards turn number 1.
Yeah, so Jake Cowden, we'll see how he goes with Gavin Sanders vying for that top spot. Kenny Reedman in the 42 will be looking for that as well. Owen Clark, could this be an opportunity for him to get onto the podium? Connor Bell will be in the mix as well in the 15. And Stephen Chen, who had a podium recently at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, you can't rule him out either in the 30.
No, and that was in trying conditions at CTMP, the driver of the 30 picking up a podium finish. So, yeah, we've had a bunch of different faces in the M-Zone RCC reach the podium. Jake Cowden was dominant at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, but Gavin Sanders joined him on a couple of occasions. Kenny Reedman has been strong. Connor Bell, obviously, just finishing in third in race number 1 earlier today. So, yeah, there's been a mix of characters. There's been a lot of parity in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada.
John Field will be carving his way up through that group. And no doubt Wayne Williams will be trying his best as well on the timing. The 57 is still in front of the Platinum Class field, and for that matter, the Blue Marble Radical Cup Series. But he's going to have some work to do. A couple others to look out for. The 73 of Kevin Poitras. And that's fantastic to see that car get up on the grid, because they were rebuilding that car after that mishap in race 1. Factory technicians flown over for England to support all of the Radical crews here this weekend. and it came down to the wire, still putting coolant in the front of those radiators and trying to burp the system before they got out onto the grid. Awesome job from Radical Canada and the technicians over from England. He's sitting in fourth position in class at the moment.
Yeah, 10th overall. And as a matter of fact, Wayne Williams, John Field have moved up to 6th and 7th overall and so they're starting to work through the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada competitors, and that's no surprise. I mean, the Platinum cars driven by Williams, Field, Indy Al Miller, Kevin Poitras, they have a bigger engine, a 2.3-liter turbocharged engine. They make the most horsepower of any of the vehicles out there right now.
Gavin Sanders back in the lead of the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada from Jake Cowden. So there's been a lead change there. Kenny Reedman still in third. No, we've lost Kenny Reedman. No, we haven't. Sorry, we've lost someone, though. We've had quite a succession of cars being passed.
Connor Bell dropped all the way down to 9th overall, so he was running just behind Kenny Reedman, and Wayne Williams has managed to get around John Field, Owen Clark, so that's a change for position in class, and Indy Al Miller has moved up as well.
I think it's just the Platinum cars rocketing up through that field. Perhaps no issues, but Connor Bell relegated to 9th outright on the circuit. Of course, outright position not meaning much here this afternoon or indeed all over the weekend. There's multiple classes in the Blue Marble field. There's an additional class, in effect, a completely different series in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. So everyone vying for the top three, and turn 3 has caused another full course caution, we believe.
Yeah, so we're waiting for an update as to who was off in turn number 3, but we can tell you there is a visible difference on the cars. If you're looking at them and you're saying, wait a second, no, there's not. They all look the same. If you look at the tail wing as we continue under this full course caution, the second of this race number 2 for the Radicals here at the Honda Indy Toronto, if you look at the rear wing, if it has a red stripe on the rear wing, that's the Pro 1500s. If it has yellow on the rear wing, it's the Platinum class. Blue on the rear wing would indicate the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. Green on the rear wing is the Pro 1340s from the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America.
And speaking of the Pro 1500s, Greg Gorski now in the lead of Pro 1500s. Something has happened to Dushelski. I fear that might be one of the reasons for...
And Soroka, too.
Yeah,
I think they might be in that turn 3 incident.
Yeah, and that's disaster for Danny Dushelski trying to claw his way back in the points. This is going to get... But it's Nick Persing as well.
Yeah,
so the top 3 in that class in terms of pace, performance, talent, you'd say as well, all running out of luck here. And luckily then for Dushelski, that doesn't matter too much in terms of points. Robert Soroka, though, heartache for him. He was so frustrated after the last race. He said, I just want to take a win. I know I can take it to these guys. I'm here in my hometown. I know I can do this, but didn't quite get the break. He was actually doing a rain dance between these two races. And unfortunately for Soroka, he's involved. So Gorski, the 24, he's been looking for a race win this season. Could it be now? Aurora Strauss elevated into second position in Pro 1500. Mike Anzaldi, he was fought with Austin Riley for the championship in Pro 1340 last year. Anzaldi sits on the racetrack in third in that class. Austin in fourth. So the championship battle from last year comes full circle here on the streets of Toronto. It'll be exciting to watch young Austin Riley flying the Canadian flag. Let's see if he can get a podium in Pro 1500.
And just sliding down the running order a little bit, so looking at all the live timing and scoring that's available to us here in the announce booth. And Ken Savage, who came in as your points leader in the Pro 1340 division, he's had some issue at some point. So he is now 2 laps down to your race leader, and Hugh Leahy as well in the 1340, the Pro 1340 class. So that one of the Canadians racing in the Blue Marble Radical Cup has had some issues. So he is towards the tail of the running order.
You know, that's a real tough break for Ken Savage. So there's a young guy. We started talking about him. Came up through the Lucas Oil Racing School, did very well in that, won a bit of a scholarship, elected to put that effort into the Radical Cup Series, and has been doing a tremendous job. Ken was one of the fastest guys in that earlier wet race, even though in the diminutive 1340 class. And it just shows the caliber of driving throughout the entire field. It doesn't matter what the engine capacity. And if you haven't cottoned on yet, 1340 designates the number of cc's, the capacity of that motorcycle-derived power plant. The 1500 meaning that engine's a bit souped up, bored out, and that means 1500 cc's. And then, of course, the Platinum class cars featuring the Ford EcoBoost turbocharged four-cylinder engine, 420 brake horsepower, 380 foot-pound of torque.
That's a mini prototype at that point. With that size, that much horsepower, that size tire, I mean, that's what you're going to get as far as performance levels.
One of our longtime competitors, Jim Booth, who's not with us this weekend, unfortunately had some other commitments. Jim coined the Radical SR10 the torque monster. It is unbelievable. You get behind the wheel and put the foot down. It really puts you back in your seat, and it's a pretty wild bucking bronco, particularly around the streets here. Top speeds very, very high at Road America, over 160 mile an hour, and really, really strong performance out of a diminutive car, a small chassis, but a very nimble one, and a nice thing to drive around these tight street circuits because it's just a little bit of extra space to work with.
Well, and it's still so light. You talk about that chassis, it's still so light. So once you add huge horsepower to the back of it, and that's why it's able to do the things that it does. And we talk about the weights involved. I believe it's just under 1,600 pounds with engine on that chassis for the Platinum class car here in the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America. So we continue under this full course caution. The issue is in turn number 3, and we believe it to involve several of the top runners in the Pro 1500 class. Robert Soroka, Nick Persing, and Danny Dashelski in the Pro 1500 have all dropped to the tail of the running order at this point. So
unfortunately, that's halfway through this race now. So all these drivers looking to go green, all they want to do is put on a show. And, of course, safety is the main thing here. We're just getting word that car number 94 has retired.
So that's Robert Soroka.
Yeah, so that's what we projected or predicted there. And Jack
so it is 94, 19, and 88 all involved in that turn 3 incident, which is the reason we're under this full course caution. But again, these drivers have another event coming up this weekend, and the third race of the weekend will happen early in the morning. As a matter of fact, 9:05 will be the green flag time for race number 3. Again, a 35-minute timed race for the combined Radical Cup divisions.
Yeah, great to see so many cars from both series to have over 30 cars on track at the same time. Just a huge effort from the Radical communities across North America and, of course, here in Canada. And, these guys love supporting IndyCar events, putting on a great show. This year, the Blue Marble Radical Cup features 4 IndyCar rounds, and it will be exciting to finish that championship at Laguna Seca and celebrate the victors. It's the first time that the Canadian Series has joined the IndyCar show, and very, very pleased to be able to do that.
And we should mention, too, that for the American drivers of the American Series that has come up here to Canada and to Toronto this weekend, this is the first time that the Series has raced on a temporary street circuit with walls on both sides. So for these drivers, it is something new, and it's something very daunting, especially for younger drivers or maybe those who are a little bit more inexperienced, to see those concrete walls on both sides of the race car. If you make a small misstep, if you miss your apex, the damage is severe. There's not a lot of room for error. There's some runoff spots, so if you really mess it up, you can head straight down the corner. You're not going to get any damage there. You're going to lose a ton of track position. But if you just get a little bit loose on corner exit and you're already at the limit, then things could go very wrong.
Yeah, and unfortunately things have extensive cleanup in turn 3, oil dry on the track. So plenty of work being done by the amazing emergency crews around here. Talk about a couple of other stories throughout the grid. We've mentioned Austin Riley, the hometown hero. We've mentioned Nick Persing from California. Danny Dashelski, he's been doing double duty a lot. He's also running in the USF Pro, what was the Road to Indy, and cutting his teeth both in prototype sports car racing with Radical and advancing his career both ways, really, whether it's in the prototypes or in the open wheel. He follows in the footsteps of a few young guns now that have used the Radicals out of karting to really hone their skills. Of course, multi-class racing, high downforce, wings and slicks car. You can apply all of that, whether it's to open wheel Indy cars, or you can apply it to very exotic GT cars as well in the IMSA paddock. So a number of drivers now looking to the Radical platform. And Jordan Missig, one of our alumni. And it's great to see Jordan doing well too.
And we'll get the restart the next time the field flashes by the flag stand, which is great news. And a big round of applause to the cleanup crew in turn number 3 for that extensive cleanup involving 3 cars, and all 3 coming from the Pro 1500 class, the Robert Soroka machine, Nick Persing, and Danny Dashelski.
Look out for the number 37 of John Field. For that matter, the 57 of Wayne Williams, the 500 of Indy Al Miller. Indy Al Miller set on the grid. I'm coming for John Field in this one. I said, keep it calm, mate. He said, that's not in my vocabulary. He said, I'm coming through. And I think we're going to see some of these platinum class cars. Louis Schreiber, another one. They're all going to be vying for the top step overall as well. So Gavin Sanders, Jake Cowden, Kenny Reedman might have their mirrors full in a moment. This should provide some plenty of action. If you're watching around this racetrack, get trackside, get up close to the fence, because we're going green again here with the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada and the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America. It's going to be action down into turn 1. John Field already taking the outright lead. Indy Al Miller second outright. Gavin Sanders has been swamped by the Platinum Class cars, as well as Jake Cowden. So now the front runners of the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada have to negotiate some traffic, but it's the opposite way to what they're like. They're used to passing people. These are the guys that are running up front of the field. Now they have to deal with guys carving their way up and hopefully playing rear gunner to the guys they're fighting for their podiums.
Louis Schreiber is moved up into 6th overall. Wayne Williams 4th overall, and likely making a move as they head down the Lakeshore straightaway into turn number 3. That is the benefit of the extra horsepower of those vehicles. They'll be able to use it down Lakeshore and into turn number 3 and then outbrake in hopes of picking up a position. But all the while, I mean, you have these vehicles in different classes making moves, making passes. You don't want to stick yourself out too far and give too much room, because all of a sudden a driver in your own class, somebody you're vying for a podium position with, is going to sneak through. So you really have to pay attention and have your wits about you.
That's the art of multi-class racing. It's a game of chess out there. Sometimes you can use it to your advantage. Put that out of place car. As we've lost Indy Al Miller, it looks like.
Yeah, Schreiber's now up to second overall. Wayne Williams third. Kevin Poitras has moved to fourth overall as Indiel Miller has met some issue, and he has tumbled down the running order in that 500.
Well, I said he was going to come for John Field. It's come undone for the 500 machine of Indiel Miller. But Kevin Poitras, look for the 73. If you want to cheer on a local, it's Kevin Poitras, and he's fourth position in the Platinum class. Could this be an opportunity? What a great one it would be for Poitras to get on top, or up onto the podium, rather. Wayne Williams will have something to say about that for sure. And Louis Schreiber will all of a sudden be thinking, wow, could this be an opportunity for a win?
Greg Gorski leads the Pro 1500s that last time by Aurora Strauss in second, ahead of Mike Anzaldi. That is third place in the Pro 1500 as we work through all the different classes. Seth Bacon now leads in the Pro 1340 ahead of Jace Bacon. And third place in the Pro 1340 is Hugh Leahy, who's down in 29th. So it looks to be it's a two Bacon battle in the Pro 1340.
Double bacon sandwich, perhaps.
Ah.
You look at Greg Gorski in Pro 1500 winning or leading over teammate Aurora Strauss. That's a good one. That's going to be a good battle with Mike Anzaldi. Connor Bell, the 15 machine, in 11th overall. So this is the challenge for someone like Connor Bell. He's now got a few cars in between him and rival Kenny Reedman. It's going to be hard for him to progress. The big thing he's going to have to do is look out for Owen Clark, who's sitting behind in car 70. Robert Cipriani Dietrich leads Pro 1340 at the moment from Seth Bacon, as you mentioned. All of the class intermingled at the moment as John Field sets a 1:15.9. The time starting to tumble.
And it's interesting, too, as you take a look at the battle within the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. 0.4 of a second between Sanders and Cowden the last time they crossed the stripe. Then 0.6 of a second back to Kenny Reedman. The top three covered by a blanket the last time they crossed the stripe. We'll see how that changes this time as they make their way onto the front straightaway one more time. Again, 8.5 minutes left in this race, and it is still Sanders now with 0.6 of a second gap. But Kenny Reedman has closed in on Jake Cowden.
Yeah, and Sanders doing a good job because he's doing 18s. A couple of the Platinum class cars ahead of him are only in the 18s as well. John Field and Louis Schreiber basically matching each other in terms of lap times, but the gap has expanded. So Louis Schreiber, whether that's a little bit of traffic, the gap now is out to 2.4 seconds.
There's a battle for the lead in the Pro 1500 class as well. Greg Gorski has top spot in the number 24, but just 0.4 of a second ahead of the 17 of Aurora Strauss the last time they crossed the stripe. So that is a battle that is heating up as well.
This is the best of spec racing. All these cars so evenly matched. It comes down to the squishy bit in between the pedals and the steering wheel, and the drivers making the difference. It's only a minuscule difference at the moment, though, with Greg Gorski lapping in similar lap times to Aurora Strauss. She's slightly faster. Mike Anzaldi's not far off that pace as well. We've got, as you mentioned, the guys at the front of the M-Zone Radical Cup field running very, very quickly. And John Fields just set a 1:14.4. Wow, so you can start to see the power, the speed, and the prowess of a former American Le Mans Series champion, John Field, in the 37, showing everyone who's boss.
If you want to hear the crowd go crazy, Austin Riley is about 1.5 seconds off the last step of the podium in the Pro 1500 class. He's chasing Mike Anzaldi, but he is catching Mike Anzaldi. A quicker lap time by about 0.6 of a second that time by for the young Austin Riley behind the wheel of the Spark Power number 20. If he steps on the podium, this place will go wild.
Absolutely, and if you don't know Austin's story, check out racingwithautism.com, I think, and check out his story. An amazing young man, such an amazing ambassador. He started a global movement. There's actually Racing with Autism down in Australia. There's all sorts of fans in England. You name it. He has started a movement, and he is moving forward. The only challenge for Austin Riley is he's got the 15 of Connor Bell between himself and Mike Anzaldi. Mike Anzaldi will be sighing some small little bit of relief there with that out-of-class, effectively, car between him and his rival. Anzaldi looking to claim a little bit of bragging rights after losing the championship to Austin Riley. Austin Riley now, something has happened to that car 15 because Austin now right behind Anzaldi.
Yeah, and by 0.2 of a second the last time they crossed the stripe as well.
But I tell you what, Indy Miller's carved his way back up through the field. The 500 now running 12th overall.
Yeah, he's moved. So something happened that cost him a spot towards the front of the Platinum field. He has a ways to go to catch whoever's in front of him. As a matter of fact, that's Kevin Poitras, and he's about 14 seconds back of the 73. So Indy Miller is hoping for a caution flag to get him closer to the rest of the field in the Platinum class.
If there's something about Indy Miller, he might not need it. He did an amazing job at the World Finals at Spring Mountain Country Club at the end of last year, racing against one of the top radical racers from England, a real young gun who's just got a drive in British touring car, and twice Indy spun with some of these big gusts of wind that we were getting in the final. Twice he clawed his way back up through the field, and he was so close to taking that world championship. He knows how to drive these cars and extract the most out of it. But the person who's extracting the most is John Field with a 14 flat. Unbelievable lap times. It shows what performance you can get out of these cars. Relatively low cost of running. And wild performance. Gavin Sanders also, what a star. What a star in the car 10, leading the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada from Jake Cowden. And you know Jake just wants to get one more step.
He is going to fight. He tried to get it in the wet conditions earlier today, made a couple stabs for the top step of the podium. Unfortunately, couldn't make it stick for the driver of the 9. He is 0.6 of a second back in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada, chasing Gavin Sanders. Kenny Reedman also within a second of second place. So a big drive from the driver of the 42. And we're taking a look back to Austin Riley again, 0.2 of a second back of the last step of the podium in the Pro 1500 class. The number 20 is really taking it to the 61 of Mike Anzaldi.
Yeah, and Gavin Sanders having to pull something out because last time by Jake Cowden was quicker. This time it's Sanders. They're trading lap times. Of course, the lap times in this race for everyone.
Riley got him. He got him at that last lap. So Austin Riley in the 20 is up on the third step of the podium. Top 3 now for the driver of the 20 in the Pro 1500 class.
And that might be the drive of the day, if you like. Austin Riley, Pro 1500. He's really only got, and I wonder whether Indy Miller helped that, but Indy Miller ahead. He's charging hard. Austin Riley lapping with the front runners in terms of Pro 1500. Gorski still leads from Aurora Strauss. Riley on the podium at the moment. Louis Schreiber is second behind John Field in Platinum. Wayne Williams still on for a podium. Wow, what a star he is this weekend. Kevin Poitras. Could we get some more Canadians on the steps of the podium? We'll find out. It's tight at the top.
And time is running out. We should mention, too, now under 2 minutes left to go in this 35-minute timed race, the combined Blue Marble Radical Cup North America and the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada, taking it to the streets of Toronto.
Well, after a bit of a slow start there and a frustrating one with those full course cautions, what a race we've had. Some wild rides, but some fantastic performances. And it's all going to come down to the wire. Robert Cipriani Dietrich, he might get his first win in the Blue Marble Radical Cup for this year. The Pro 1340 driver looking to convert. Some fantastic fast laps in qualifying. He hasn't done it yet. John Field leads the pack. What will Louis Schreiber do? I think he'll have to settle for second place. Wayne Williams looks solid for the third step of the Platinum class. Gavin Sanders looking to take a victory here from Jake Cowden and Kenny Reedman.
And that Pro 1500 class, Greg Gorski does have the lead over Aurora Strauss, but man, it's close. 0.4 of a second that last time they crossed the stripe, and will be clicking off. Should be seeing the white flag very, very shortly.
And look who's coming. India Miller's rocketed up to 6 overall. He might even make a little bit of a mess, if you like, of the lead for the Radical Cup Canada. In fact, he has put himself between Sanders and Cowden. So Cowden's last chance might be if India Miller can get ahead of Sanders and perhaps open the door there.
A lot of these drivers turning their quickest times, but you're right, the difference between Jake Cowden and Gavin Sanders is now over a second after it was just 0.1 of a second for so long in this race number 2. But still, it is Sanders leading Cowden and Reedman. That's your top 3 in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada field. John Field now with a significant gap at the top of the Platinum group.
So we're in overtime effectively. I think we're just waiting for the checkered flag. John Field should take the win in the Platinum class from Louis Schreiber and Wayne Williams. Kevin Poitras just off the podium.
The difference in the 1500 class, Greg Gorski, only 1.5 or 0.15 seconds, so 1/10.5 ahead of Aurora Strauss as we await the checkered flag here in the Radical Cup group. So Greg Gorski leading the Pro 1500. Now it's 2:10, so he did manage to open up a bit more space. Austin Riley still the final step of the podium in that group.
Yeah, and India Miller up to 5th place overall and in class in the Platinum class. Gavin Sanders in the lead from Jake Cowden, Kenny Reedman. That's the top 3 in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada.
Jake Cowden just turned his fastest lap of the day, a 1:17.9. He's on fire as he looks to close the gap to Gavin Sanders, but might be too little too late. 0.8 of a second is a long time to make up in one lap.
It's very hard for us to tell whether that checkered flag has actually flown.
And it appears as though it has.
I think it has,
See,
yeah.
on timing and scoring, we get our finish indication. So it looks like checkered flag has flown here in race number 2 for the combined Blue Marble Radical Cup North America and the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada.
Well, congratulations to John Field, Louis Schreiber, Wayne Williams, your top 3 in the Platinum class. Then on track, it was Gavin Sanders taking the win over a hard-charging Jake Cowden, Kenny Reedman, the top 3 in the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. Greg Gorski, fantastic result for him, his first win of the season from Aurora Strauss, who's found herself again on the podium in Pro 1500. Austin Riley. There is going to be the biggest celebration down here in Victory Circle. And if you're anywhere near it, come on over the Honda Bridge if you're on the infield. Get down to celebrate Austin Riley on the podium in Pro 1500. Robert Cipriani Dietrich, Pro 1340 winner from Seth Bacon and Jace Bacon. So the Bacons, well, it will be a bacon sandwich on top of that podium, won't it?
A whole lot of bacon on the top of that podium for sure. So we'll run over and get a quick word with some of the podium finishers here in all divisions in the combined Radical Cup race to finish off day number 2 Saturday as we send things back over to Todd.
Great job, guys, with the Radicals. A little bit of a herky-jerky start, if you will, with a little full course caution yellow on this race today, but terrific way to wrap up our Saturday here at the Honda Indy Toronto. Really terrific performance out on track.
I think for all these drivers walking around the paddock just before the start of this race, they're so excited to be here, part of this great event, to be not only in the streets of Toronto, but then for the Americans to be able to come up here and experience all that this great city has to offer, the atmosphere. Everyone's been so friendly, And we're just delighted to be a part of this. And on behalf of Radical Sports Cars, we really appreciate the promoters, Honda Indy Toronto, of course, our friends at FEL Motorsports who put on the Canadian Series. It's just a wonderful thing to be a part of and showcase the Radical cars and their talented drivers up here in front of this fantastic crowd.
Great to have you here, Tom. Great job again. We'll see you tomorrow morning for the third race of the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America and the M-Zone Radical Cup Canada here on the streets of Toronto. That will wrap up our Saturday action. Make plans to join us again tomorrow for day 3 of the Honda Indy Toronto. We are on track with our first activity, beginning with race number 2 for the USF 2000 Series. Goes green at 8:10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and the Radical